You want to make a bit of money? You should do what I did. Get into farming. See this? I got this selling corn. Comes out of the fucking ground. I couldn't believe it.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. I'm back with Sean Murphy. It's been a while, Sean. How are you?
Dude, it's been a while. Yeah, it's good to see you. I heard you had a crazy busy year.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a terrible year. I remember I missed the live streams, I missed the interviews, I missed all that kind of stuff. I'm getting older and tired.
How long has it been since you live streamed? A year?
A year? Yeah, 1 year.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I could say I missed it, but I missed it with you. That's what that's just you.
Thank you.
No,
yeah,
I appreciate all the other people who are listening to this now that are offended.
It's nice being the pretty girl at the bar. Thank you.
So obviously life's going pretty well. You've got this third volume. You're racing to the finish line now.
I am. Yeah, I'm currently halfway through the final issue. I had a lot of delays. Everything hit me at once in this book. Not just COVID delays, but like laptop broke. Threw in 2 extra conventions. I threw in extra meetings to figure out why marketing wasn't doing their job in my book. Stuff like that, like managerial things. And I added up how much of a time suck all that was. Because I've never been late in my entire career, except for once when I got married and Hurricane Sandy hit at the same time. Yeah. So I don't like being late. And this year I'm late. And I'm like, oh, this is like a month and a half is accumulated with all the extra shit I had to do. Some of it my fault, most of it not. And, I'm glad. I mean, in hindsight, does anybody care if one of the, a series they loved 10 years ago was late at all, or does it eventually just get forgotten about because it's evergreen?
I mean, not in a month and a half for sure. I mean, I think there's still some people who are a little pissy about Civil War and some of those books that became months and months late, but not.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
My editor, I asked her, I was like, because we have a spinoff book for White Knight that hasn't been announced yet. It's also delayed, and it's delayed in issue 2. And I finally turned the screws to her, and I was like, "What is going on? I understand I'm late, but like, are all your other books late? And I understand you have 17 different books or whatever, but this is just crazy." And she said, "Well, because conventions are back, I think a lot of creators are struggling with getting their normal schedule back, where they can plan out shows and then plan out their schedules."
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I believe that. I really don't like making excuses for people being late. But I recall lateness being a big problem years ago, and these days people just kind of shrug it off. I think it's just an effect of the fatigue and the lack of motivation that the entire industry feels, whether they know it or not.
Well, I agree, and the monthly sales as well. I mean, more and more people are looking to the trades. And, to just thinking ahead of that. So it's
right.
It is not the same. I mean, and I think the streaming shows have done it a little bit too, where you things drop all at once and you wait 2 years for Stranger Things to return or whatever it happens to be. So it's like, not when it comes out.
Yeah, that's fair.
I hate it. I hate everything. I hate every piece of it. But okay, that's why.
I had an interesting theory that I want to throw at you before we start here.
Yeah.
The short version is, I feel like the healthy industry that creators want, they actually don't want it. They actually prefer the poverty-stricken industry we have. Because if you really made this industry more professional and brought in more money, a lot of the creators and employees would be gone because they wouldn't cut it.
It's true.
To expand, I feel like if this was healthy, let's just say I dumped $20 billion into comics. If you are an employee of DC or Marvel or any of these smaller companies, if you can't perform, you're gone. I think there would be more money in comics journalism if you handled it right. I think that the fact that Bleeding Cool is our biggest one is a shame. And I don't think Bleeding Cool.
I think you were going to go with, but yeah.
I mean, I think Bleeding Cool would still be there, but they would be like number 10 because we would have like much better news sites. I think all in all. So more money, if we had a system to help with insurance, benefits, retirement, if we took care of this the way like tech is taken care of, I think if you told most creators, do you want an industry that's run professionally like that and you're going to get paid more and this and that? Mm-hmm. They would say, yeah, but then they go, well, what's the catch? Well, here's the catch. If you can't perform, you're gone. If you flunk out of Marvel and end up at 2 other companies and keep falling down the ladder, there is no ladder. You're gone. If you're not an innovator, you're gone. If you're not good at writing, you're gone. If you're like Marvel's a writer now because there isn't much competition because Marvel won't pay real rates for writing. If we suddenly start paying real rates for writing, you're going to have a lot of great people come in who are going to take your job.
Right.
So if you push that to people, I don't think they actually want that. Oh, and the other thing is, an industry that's well run would probably inspire people not to be on social media saying a bunch of shit.
Oh, for sure.
So part of the deal of fixing this would be everyone's got to get off of Twitter, or at least a little bit. Everyone's got to change their Twitter hat. If you actually propose that to most people who are complaining about money, I think they would still go, no, actually, I don't want that. I'd prefer the poverty-laden industry we have instead of going up against those rules, because those rules would destroy people.
You're 100% right. I mean, you know what I do for a living, kind of outside of all this, and it is run. I mean, there is a social media policy. You can't be on it. They do send things out like, hey, if you talk about this in this moment, a publicly traded company, if you talk about certain things during certain windows, you're not only fired, you're potentially sued, and you have civil and criminal liability.
Right.
That all is real. The more money is definitely needed for comics, but like you said, the more money comes with, you got to show up to work on time.
Yeah.
You have to be there. Yeah. Sorry if you're doing 17, books or whatever it happens to be. They've all got to run on time. And if they don't, work extra hours. And if you don't like working the extra hours, there's 50 people waiting to take your job.
Yeah.
And that's the consequence of a well-run industry. So I think if you suddenly put that out, people would start getting back to but comics shouldn't be a business. It should be art. It should be creative expression. And creative expression doesn't need rules. And you water into a whole other area. So.
Yeah. That drives me crazy. The reason I wanted to do this podcast was because people ask me financial advice a lot, and I thought it would be convenient just to get it all down in one place. Every time I tackle a new topic with you, like one was social media once, I kind of feel like I've scratched that itch and I don't need to talk about it ever again. I can just refer people to that podcast. So,
and then people listen to it, and then they never have any problems again. It solves all
the. Well, the problem is talking about money with creators. Most of them don't listen. Like they'll ask me, "Hey, man, how do I get more money? How do I have my own series like White Knight? What are the steps I should take in order to start doing this?" If I said, "All right, here are 10 things," I'm going to start going down the list, and they're going to start going, "Nah, I don't want to do that. That sounds hard. I don't know. What's the next one?" They're just going to hand wave most of the things I'm going to suggest. They'll agree to do 2 of them, and then in the end, they won't do 1 of them. Yeah. And it's sort of, I'm tired of wasting my breath talking about money to people that have just signed on to poverty. And they don't look at it that way, but that's how I look at it.
That's exactly it. Hey, so I'm anxious to talk about this. This will be a good topic.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you before we get all into it. So
all right.
There's a video I put out recently. I think it just dropped today, but I've been getting a ton of mail on it. And the mail is all that people don't like it. So the premise of the mail is creators do not fundamentally at a core level really understand why the fans are upset.
Yeah.
So people don't like that. That they're just, the fans are listening to that, just they won't accept it. No, the creators know they're doing this on purpose.
Well, the reason that's insulting, I bet, is these people, you have so much angry energy built up towards, I don't know, Tom King.
Yeah.
The fact that he doesn't even get it means he's not really listening. And it means he's sort of, you feel like you're ignored, and it makes you even more angry. It's like you feel like you're fighting with really good points about why the industry is suffering. And not only does Tom King not listen, he doesn't even make an attempt to hear you. Or someone like Mark Brooks, they just go on and kick the hornet's nest online because it's fun.
Right.
I think the people that are mad at that podcast, it's not that they don't agree with you. It's just that it pisses them off even more if they're not being heard.
Don't blame the messenger, folks. I mean, it is. It's what I guess my point in all that is, if you find yourself so angry at this stuff, understand that your anger is going to somebody who does not even recognize.
That makes it worse. Yeah, I mean, your thing is like, hey man, relax, because they don't really understand what you're saying in the first place. I'm like, Perch, they're not going to relax. They're going to get even more upset.
The solution is just drink more. That's the solution. Anyway.
When I was listening, I thought, do I understand why they're upset? And I feel like I absolutely do, because I really want to know when people are pissed. And I think that's generally why I get along with most people politically. I have friends who voted for Trump, and I have friends who voted for Hillary. You know, even though I'm a liberal, I'm like the kind of liberal that people like. I'm old school, like you are.
Yeah.
Like I was curious why they were all pissed off. So I did spend the last few years, like when Trump got elected, I started listening to like, what did I miss here? Because all I did was listen to Charlie Rose, who hadn't been canceled at that point, and a bunch of other, you know, liberal tunnel vision podcasts, really trying to understand the phenomenon of Trump. And I totally didn't fucking get it. So when he got elected, I felt very annoyed. Like, why did I waste my time listening to all this shit? So I made the effort to try to dive into what the other team was thinking. So when this happened, that's kind of when Comicsgate started up. So I was sort of primed to be like, all right, let's see what these guys are upset about. Let's see what Zach is saying. Let's see what Ethan's saying. Like, maybe there's some good points. Maybe there's something to learn. And I have no problem wading into those waters if I can learn something. But most people don't. And yeah, they just haven't gotten on to that next step. And I feel like for me, listening to them taught me about like, if you're going to do a book about cops, like I'm doing right now, don't get political with it. You can still make your subtle political points, but you have to represent both sides of cops. So Beyond the White Knight is like a book about overpowered police, and there's two different kinds of cops. There's good cops and bad cops. Sure. Now people tried to cancel me after George Floyd for saying good cops are good, bad cops are bad, which is totally sane to 99% of people. And what I have in my book is the same thing. Good cops good, bad cops bad. And no one's really trying to come after me because there's a way to handle that message that isn't going to trigger everybody.
Right.
Because people are looking for it right now. And I don't blame them for being jaded and angry. I don't agree with a lot of what both sides say, but I know enough about their message to be able to like walk over the laser beams at least. And the idea that somebody like Mark Brooks was your example. I don't know what he actually believes, but just to take your example, the idea that he doesn't know that at all is just stunning to me. Like, why wouldn't you want to learn what these ragey people are attacking you? Like, read their commandments. Like, listen to what they're saying. Like, just give it an hour. Like, all you really need is to hear one of them rant for an hour, and you basically have it all. The fact that they don't get it is annoying.
It's hard. I mean, it requires some self-reflection, and it also requires this weird ability we seem to have lost of just because you listen to someone doesn't mean you have to agree with them, or doesn't mean that just listening to them does not make you a bad person.
Right.
And that's somehow that became a very strange line people cross. Yeah. You know, if I listen to it, then I'm infected somehow. It's a strange, very strange, but
yeah.
Okay, so this kind of leads though into a little bit what we want to talk about. So people making money in comics, how do you prevent yourself from falling into that poverty gap?
Yeah.
Imparting the wisdom. So here we go.
Let's talk about, we're going to give basic tips, sort of explain why it ends up happening. There's something called the religion of poverty that I like to call it. We'll get more into that later. And then I'd also like to talk about when you make it, now what do you do? So you're making 80 a year. How do you keep making 80 a year? How do you come up with a long-term plan and not step in it? Try to have longevity to your career, which most people never get to that point anyway, but it's kind of fun to like game out what happens if you actually are successful. And I hope the retention rate of this podcast is big. I know that talking about money isn't like dunking on chuds or any of the culture war stuff, but I hope the people that do listen to this take some notes or walk away with a little bit of an understanding, because
I hope so.
I'm just tired of seeing people poor. And they're not really, they'll complain about it, but they're not taking the necessary steps to get out of it. They don't know how to level up. Is the phrase that you and I keep coming back to.
Mm-hmm. Every 15 minutes, all insult a creator in a very subtle way. So you're going to have to listen closely and stick all the way.
Okay.
We'll do.
So the one thing that I'd start off with is I think art school sets people up to fail. I think they don't give you any classes in business skills. Even when I was at SCAD in Georgia, the teacher was reading from Accounting for Dummies. Like literally the yellow book she had in her hand, and she had never actually worked in the field. She was a grad student that just got hired, so she didn't really know what she was talking about. And as far as I know, it's not that much better now. And like you said, even with some of like the educational seminars that friends of ours run, it's nice getting tips on drawing and writing, but how about keeping track of your taxes and finances? Like just 10 minutes talking about that stuff, and no one ever does. I think art school also sells you false dreams. And the cost of art school now is like 80 a year, which is more than what Harvard would charge you. And when you graduate Harvard, the average salary of a Harvard grad is like 200 to 400 a year. The average grad of an art school that costs more than that is like 330 a year. And mostly you're going home, living in mom's basement to get that. So they really have a way of setting up people to fail, whether they realize it or not. Like the experience of being an artiste is at its peak for most people when they're in art school. After that, I feel like 80 to 90% of them wash out one way or another. And really, they're a bunch of students who are paying for the education of the 5% who actually know what to do with it and how to employ it.
I totally agree. I've known a lot of people who've gone through the colleges, both the kind of the machine colleges like the art institutes, places like that, and then the more, individual kind of colleges they're more specialized, but almost all of them, there's no basic kind of college skills there, and certainly business, but in many cases there's not, math or just some basic, like, here's how to read a contract, or here's, and it does set them up to fail. I completely agree. It's a huge bill. By the way, I think, the rate you're getting out there is like 30K is kind of your average go home salary. And you're saddled with debt. And in many cases, that 30K is, you're lucky to get it. A lot of these jobs are like 2-year gigs.
And if it's even in the arts, then you're ahead of the game. Most people who make 30K are working at Best Buy or Home Depot or whatever, trying to get by. Like, very few people get out of art school and actually have a job in art. And Kinko's doesn't count. Is Kinko's even around anymore, by the way?
It's FedEx now.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know that.
but no, you're right. There's so many people that I know went out of art school, went to FedEx. That was a job, or they did a job as a administrative assistant in a corporation somewhere, or not in the arts at all.
Right, barista. A lot of them went home to live in the basement somewhere.
I think you had a weird combo of people who would go to those schools, and I had several friends go, and you had people who were rich, families were rich. So the college was really dad's money, mom's money. I mean, it was not their money, so they didn't really care about the outcome. And that worked out as well as you'd think.
Right.
And then the other group is maybe, that's their passion. But the art school drills in on the passion and doesn't drill in here's how you do the boring parts to make sure you actually get to your passion.
Yeah. My wife made her money doing wedding photography for a while. And she had a major in photography. And I think the school, our alma mater, was having some kind of event. And they didn't invite her because they didn't think wedding photography was actually photography. But I know she made a lot more shooting weddings than these artistes did shooting photos that go up at Starbucks. And that's the disconnect right there, is I feel like you should teach them, listen, sometimes you have to shoot weddings. That's what you do to pay the bills until you can do the fine art stuff. This is just the sacrifice that you make. And there shouldn't be any shame in it. This is just how it is. It's like shaming kids not to be mechanics and electricians and telling them they all need to go to art school to get a degree in lesbian dance theory. This is what's gotten us into the problem. Is there's too many privileged kids who have no idea. we overpromise them, and it's kind of not their fault that they're pissed.
Well, yeah, and it's I mean, I remember there was an interview we did a while ago with Jim Zub, and he was talking about being in comics. And one of the pieces of advice he gave, which I think flew under the radar for a lot of people, was kind of dead accurate, is no matter what else you do with kind of writing skills, art schools, etc., I'm paraphrasing, be a project manager. Basically, be the person who delivers stuff on time, gets the mails going. If your editor's busy, moves things from here to there. Be helpful, because that's pragmatic. It'll grow your career. You would never get anything like that in our college.
Yeah, it's sad. And the thing too, I mean, we know a lot about brain science that we didn't used to know. We know that the brain doesn't finish forming until your mid to late 20s. Keeping that in mind, you think about the average kid that graduates from art school who's had 4 years of saving poverty, unless mom and dad are paying the bills. Now you've got from your 22 till you're 30, struggling to find work. You're probably still poor. So the last stage of your brain development, you're actually getting more and more used to a life of poverty.
Right.
This is why I start calling it a religion of poverty. Is you instead of having money, you trick yourself into thinking that you have street cred or that you're keeping it real. You romanticize the fact that you're not getting paid and you think that you're punk rock or something like that. And your friends are doing it too, so they're reinforcing you.
Right.
And it's not just a bad habit; it's a way of thinking. That's why I will upgrade this to like an actual religion. And even when you're faced with a job that will start paying, you don't even know how to handle that because you've been thinking about money one way, and you just resign to the fact that you're poor. And even when someone tells you an idea of how to get wealthy, you just have this distaste in your mouth of like, oh, why would I want to get wealthy? Like you're that far into the hole of this religion. And I think most creative people just don't know how to get out.
I absolutely agree. No, it reinforces, as I said, the peer, the friend model, because know, people naturally, they don't want to, they don't want to feel bad about what they're doing with their life. Nobody wants to walk around just feeling miserable and like they made bad choices. So you will self-select into things that make you feel better. Yeah. And this religion of poverty, I think that's a good way to put it. It is that idea of, I don't have the money, so I'm going to figure out a way I feel good.
Right.
With my choices.
Yeah.
But the reality, they are still bad choices. You could feel good about your choices to, keep yourself from cutting open your wrist in a bathtub, but you still have to recognize at some level you made the wrong choices.
Yeah. I mean, you can hold on to your punk rock morals but at some point you're going to be 60 and you're going to have a medical problem and you're not going to have any money. So as much as you've kept it real in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, it sure would be nice to have an extra $20K for that X-ray, wouldn't it? Yeah. And you want to talk about what's really going to happiness. I don't think living the artistic punk rock, keeping it real lifestyle is really making you happy. I hate to sound like a Republican, but I think money does add to happiness, or at least security. Yeah. Even the person who's really adamant about keeping it real, tell me that they couldn't use another 20 grand a year just to cover some medical curveball or take an extra vacation or have a little bit of saving money to help them buy a house. Of course. Oh, absolutely. Of course they would. But that's just not something that creative people think about because it's like against their religion or something.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of pressure around if they don't want to necessarily admit that they're good with money. I've met several creative people who actually have saved up and they've got some cash in the bank, and I mean, not millions of dollars, they've got something, and they are thoroughly embarrassed of it. And they do not want to admit that they've done this. They feel like and they almost describe it as, I didn't deserve this money. It was a cheat somehow. It was a con. The problem is, if you go into a lot of industries, you talk to wealthy people, they'll tell you one of the most important things is to recognize that you made the money you made and that you were responsible for that. Right. Because that's how you're going to get the next bit. And if you brush it off as, I didn't really deserve that. That wasn't mine. It was luck. It was like Vegas kind of money. It wasn't actually something I made. Yeah. They won't, they'll never acknowledge that they actually worked hard to get something. And that's important.
Yeah, I agree with you. It took me a while to actually acknowledge that I was a one percenter of comics anyway, or I guess just in life. I won't say what I make, but I did some math recently and I make 30 to 60 times more than the average artist in comics. Yeah, 30 to 60 times more. Now, I had a knockout year with art sales and Batman and all that stuff, so it might not always be this good. I understand that. I'm always ready for the floor to come out from under me. But it took me a while to be able to say that because I felt like my poverty-ridden peers would see me as the enemy or judge me for being a capitalist, or even the fact that I own a house or own 3 houses now and I rent them. Like, being a capitalist is a bad word. And I just feel like the point of this podcast is to say, like, those are not bad words. You should be striving for these things. I don't know what the kryptonite, why money is kryptonite to artists. They won't say it is, but everything they say and do essentially says, yeah, you don't know what to do with money if I gave it to you. You made yourself proud to pat yourself on the back for not having money for whatever weird reason. And all your friends are doing it. And rather than feel good about salary or being able to put some money away to buy a house, you put more credit in likes on social media. Yeah. Like, that's insane. It's all insane, but none of you really wants to say that quiet part out loud.
Yeah. No, Twitter likes are more important than financial security.
Totally. Yeah.
It is crazy. And Yeah, I mean, it is. I think there is a certain element of people who don't have it and have kind of hit this point where they know they're never going to get it.
Right.
They're reinforcing this hard. The rich people, don't be a rich person. You can be humble and still be wealthy. You can be generous. In fact, wealthy people have more of an opportunity to be generous. They have more to give.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's a lot of little pieces. I'm sure we'll get into it more, but there's very easy ways. You mentioned just a second ago, renting houses.
Yeah.
So that is one of those systems that builds on itself. I rent out a house.
Yeah.
The same thing. It's great. The rental pays for any debt on that house, and then it builds, and you keep doing it, and it grows and grows and grows, and that's just basic business sense.
Right. It's funny, when I took a photo of I sold a bunch of art this year to fund my third house, which I'm fixing up, and we're going to Airbnb it.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I'm more interested in Airbnb is not to be an evil landlord. It's because one house Airbnb for me is $30,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 houses now I'm renting out, so that's $60,000 a year. I have to do nothing for that, right? The average money I make on a movie option, once I split it with Rick Remender or Millar, once I pay my lawyer and taxes, I maybe make 20 to 30 on a movie option. That's like barely enough for a bathroom renovation. And to chase down movie options, it's hard. It's like being struck by lightning. It's a lot of luck. And even though you sell movie an option for a year, it takes 3 years. It's a year building up to the sale. You've got a year when it's actually optioned, and then sometimes there's a little bit of overflow where they own it, but they don't. Whatever. The fact is that even when people brag about a movie option, they're probably bragging about $30,000 they made over 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, as good as it feels to throw your dick out and go, I have a movie option, I'm one of those guys in comics, as unsexy as it is owning property and renting an Airbnb, that's $30,000 every year. That's way less fussy for me, way less liability. And I own equity in it, and it's going to keep paying every year. Like, I think it's actually better to own property. I'd rather own property than have 100 movie options, honestly.
Oh, I absolutely. I mean, my wife did that before we met a lot. She had 6 houses. She would buy them. She would fix them up. She would rent. She'd make the money off of it. She'd go to the next one, and she'd just cycle it through. Now, her passion was absolutely not in fixing up houses or real estate, but and I think there's a point you're getting back to is you then have this cushion of money. Yeah, you come back and you can do your passion, and you can do it more freely and more, whatever you're going to do, knowing that you're secure.
Yeah, exactly. But when I took a photo of this, of my new house, and posted on Instagram, and I could not believe the amount of negativity I got from people, not necessarily on my IG, but on Twitter. People like, oh, Sean's going to be an evil landlord. Like, oh, this is part of the problem. And I'm like, first of all, how do you know I'm not buying this house, fixing it up, and then selling it? I'm not a landlord. But a lot of the angry landlord comments came from third world countries, where I guess it's just traditional to just dunk on landlords because they're evil and there's a class divide. So a lot of these comments were written in broken English. I'm like, all right, well, I don't know what it's like to be Mexican and deal with this, or Colombia, so whatever.
Yeah.
And mostly I just brushed it off. But I was stunned with, I feel like if an artist buys an investment property, it should be celebrated. And the amount of shit I was getting, I totally did not see coming.
No, it's been that way for a long time, though, and it's why you have so many artists who collect cars or have property or these things, and they keep it an absolute death secret from others because they're concerned, like I said, that they're going to be called evil, sinister, capitalist. I mean, capitalist is a newer one, but I mean, just greedy, bad. I mean, it's all the negative things, and I, like you, would much rather see the celebration. We should be applauding when some of these people are able to buy these things. When Donny Cates did his European vacation, he was posting photos and people were dunking on him for his weird hat. I was happy. I was like, good. This is a guy who needs a vacation. So that was my takeaway. Like, good. I'm glad he's able to afford a European vacation. I wish they all could. Yeah, that's the state of the industry you want.
Yeah. Yep. But with people who have success at Marvel, I'm not picking on Donnie. I'm anybody who just is brought in as the A-lister all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. The Marvel or DC will just throw money at you, and you immediately start buying a house or a car, and you don't think of the fact that you might be riding high for a while, but eventually Marvel or DC they're going to retire you to the B team. Like your best year might be 2 to 3 years when you're on top, but then they're going to usher you to the side and someone new is going to come in. So you can't count on your best years being every year. Like I am trying to make my best year last as long as I can. I've been doing it for 8 years so far, but for most people, that's not practical. So when I see big writers like Donnie or whatever buy a house and car and all that, like I'm so happy for them. I think it should be applauded. But I'm like, ooh, I hope they paid that off. I hope they have other equity. I hope they understand that, next 5 years from now, when they're doing books that don't sell very well, they're still able to afford their mortgage. But I'm not sure they're planning ahead. I think they're mostly in the selfie phase of feeling good and showing it off. It's weird because I think some creators do selfie their success, but I think there's this, you're right, a lot of artists are shy about talking about their success. But in tandem with that, there's this social media culture of celebrating your success, like taking a selfie of yourself near like an infinity pool of a place that you rented or whatever. People want to like put their best foot forward and make it seem like they're wealthier than they are. So I feel like it's actually becoming okay to brag about wealth because that's what everyone is doing now. And even though that runs counter to what artists are told, I think this clash is, in the end, I think it's actually more okay to start talking about wealth. Like Greg Capullo, he was having trouble with one of his cars, and he had a Jaguar, and there was a panel gap in one over the wheel. 2 panels came together, and it was wider than it should be. And he was going on a rant, 20 minutes about the dealer, and then he'd take his car back, and don't they know who I am? And he threatened to say, like, you know what, I'm a Batman artist. What if I start posting all over social media that you won't help me out? And I go, Greg, promise me that you will not post like your Jaguar problems of you and Greg Capullo. And he's like, no, I won't. Then he showed me a picture of his garage and all the other cars he have. And I'm like, that's awesome, man. This is like life goals to me. Cause I know how hard that guy works. He doesn't take weekends off. He's insane. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, Greg, I think everyone knows that you work your ass off. I think it's okay to post these things because you should be proud. Like, is it bragging? Kinda. But for me, I look at stuff like that and I go, that's like a life goal. Because I know he's not an arrogant guy. I know he's a hard worker, and I think it's okay to celebrate his success. Yeah, I don't know.
No, it's true. Well, I think there's a difference when you're talking about wealth, and I think art and the creator communities moved a little bit into the second camp where there's a first bit of people who have the financial planner and they're buying stock and they're putting money away and they're thinking about retirement and all that kind of boring stuff, but it's stuff that's going to make them happy in life.
Right.
And then there's a second group that will post things like, hey, look at me, I'm flying first class in a pod on Emirates. And, I'm staying in a, $5,000 a night place in Milan for the weekend. Yeah. And look at this. And and this is a person who appeared on the scene maybe, 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And that second group is what I see a lot in comics. And it's that second group of everything that they're buying and everything that they're posting and bragging about is not an investment. It's just money going down the toilet to some other company. Yeah. And those are the people you always know are not going to be rich for long.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. Do you want to start throwing out like basic tips and stuff for people?
We should go back and
forth.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I mentioned one a minute ago, and I think it's one I try and tell people all the time is before you go for an agent, go for a financial planner.
Yep.
A financial planner in many cases is cheap to free. Like, a lot of these places, Fidelity, those guys will give you one. If you put in, even if you put in like 10 grand, and I realize that's a high number, you put in 10 grand in investments for retirement or stocks or whatever else, typically they'll give you a financial planner free of charge or $50 a year. It's nothing.
Yeah.
And that's a person who's going to help you with insurance and help you with all these other pieces. And that, to me, is one of the smartest things people coming into it who do not have a lot of financial knowledge can do.
Right. Yeah. That's good. I agree with that. Co-signed.
All right.
I'd say figure out what you're worth per day. So if you can do a page a day, and let's say you're getting 200 a page, that means you're worth 200 a day. If you take a gig for Activision, no matter what forget about the lump sum they're going to pay you. Bill them per day. So if they say, oh, we're going to need some changes, say, fine, but I make 200 a day. Or you might even want to bluff a bit to work your way up the ladder. Yeah. So if you're taking days off to go to a convention, if you take Thursday and Friday off to go to, Chicago, you've lost $200, $400. Think of it that way. So when you are at Chicago, you better make at least $400 plus your expenses to go to the show. If you take commissions, if you can do 1 commission a day, you better be getting 200 a day. Now, obviously, commissions are going for more. So taking pricey commissions might be a way to make up for the days we are not actually working. And just try to know what you're worth, basically, and fight for what you're worth. And make a schedule of what you want to make that year. So if you're doing a page a day, you're probably doing 7 issues a year, 8 issues a year is what I would plan. You're probably able to take 10 to 20 commissions. You're probably able to do 4 different conventions. Sorry, did I say conventions twice?
Nope, that's you
the
got
beer's hitting me. Okay. So for me, for example, I did a page a day. So every year I'm like, all right, I need 8 issues. I'm doing 4 shows. I'm taking 10 to 20 commissions. I'm probably going to get sick and take time off. I'm probably going to need holiday stuff and, curveball, whatever it is, medical. So I'm basically have a checklist if I need these things each year. I need 8 issues. I need this many commissions. I need this, I need that, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people don't even do that. They don't even know what they're worth, let alone have a schedule to fill each year. And if you're making $200 a day times 52 weeks a year, I don't. How good are you at math right now, Perch?
Well, I've been drinking, so yes, not.
So $200 a day times 5 days a week. It's $1,000 a week times 4. So 4 a month times 12 months. You're making $48,000, assuming you don't take any breaks. So we'll make it 40. That's 40 grand doing what I just described, assuming you're making 200 a day, which I know some people aren't. 40 grand is more than most creators make, period.
Right.
I wish it was different, but it's not. Even so-called successful, famous creators are sometimes not even making 40 grand a year. So if you just do what I describe, if you're fast enough, if you've got the skill, you have the stick-to-itiveness to stick to this, then I think you could at least picture yourself as a $40,000 to $50,000 creator a year. Mm-hmm. And assuming you have a roommate or a wife or someone to split costs with, I know 50 years not a lot. It's not poverty line, but it's
slow.
It's slow, yeah. But you should be at least, it's a good starting place if you're in your 20s. And then you can work your way up from there.
And that's where having a good financial planner, investing into the market, buying a house, buying property, whatever it happens to be, all comes into play because that money starts to build for you. But I like your suggestion a lot. It's one I don't hear a lot of, but it's smart. You hear a lot in consulting. You definitely don't hear it in art. Nice. Cool for number 2.
Sorry.
I like it. So I mean, a classic kind of IT technical management position. Yeah. You're going to start a billing rate at about $350 to $450 an hour, and that's where you are. Wow. But they train you to think about that. That's your billable rate. You're going to bill for 9 months out of the year, right? So and weekends and everything else. You want to work your way to $600 an hour. That's kind of a very high end person in that space. But they teach you to think that worth. And it comes all the way down to when you're going out during the day and you're thinking about the activities you're doing, understand that you're spending kind of on yourself. You're spending $300 an hour on you right now if you're not billing out. And you can get obsessive about all this stuff, but I think understanding your worth and understanding from that perspective, from that financial perspective, it helps you make better decisions. Like, maybe you don't need to go to every show, and maybe maybe networking is. The question is networking worth, in your example, $400? Right. So you're spending $400 on yourself. Is it worth it?
Right. And I think a lot of creators feel the pressure to go to shows because they feel like I need to go to a show. It's an investment to network, and networking will help me get more jobs. And that's technically true, but it depends on how you network and whether or not it's a show that's actually going to get you to level up. So if you're going to little shows where there aren't any editors, that might not be a good use of your time. Unless you're doing a killing in t-shirts and prints, probably don't go. And you can look up the traffic of a show. You can find out how many attendees are in Toronto and Chicago and San Diego, and you can figure out if it's worth your time. It feels good to be invited, but you don't need to go say yes. You can say no, and maybe you should say no to a lot of these smaller shows. I know artists who they go to 40 shows a year, which is insane to me. I don't know how they can manage that and why they're not sick all the time, honestly. But I would say, smaller shows can be okay if there's a big artist or writer who's also a guest and you meet them and you genuinely get along with them and one day you get work from them. I'm not saying to brown nose someone to get work, but if you have a good connection with an artist or a writer and it pays off, great. That's not why you're there, but I guess it kind of is. But it's okay to. The opportunity is helpful. Whereas you have other shows like San Diego, which are expensive. But do big editors actually go to San Diego anymore? I think 20 years ago, I felt like I had to go to San Diego to get work. Now, San Diego is more of a media show, and I don't know if it's worth going to San Diego, honestly. I know if more editors go to Chicago and New York, then that's worth the plane ticket. That's worth the hotel. You just gotta crunch the data and figure out. Like, I know that you feel like you need to go to as many shows as possible to network, but that might not actually be the case. You might be like 50% of the time, you might be better off just staying home, working and doing commissions from home.
Well, any editor at Marvel and DC will tell you at this point that the publisher is sending fewer and fewer people to the show.
Right.
So think about that for a moment. You're a full-time employee at Marvel. Yeah. Your employer, Marvel, is saying, I don't think it's worth the money to send you to the show. That is what they're saying. Now, a lot of the editors, of course, they want to go and they want to hang out and they want to be able to party and all the rest. Right. But their boss is telling them, I don't think the show is worth your time, or rather worth our money.
Our time, yeah.
And so if the publisher is saying that, what really do you think your odds are for proper networking in a place where the publisher thinks so little of it, they don't want to spend what's often very little money? I mean, it always blows my mind that Marvel doesn't send more people to New York City Comic Con where there is no travel and hotel. It's literally a ticket, and sometimes it's a free ticket, and yet a lot of people don't get invited.
Well, they know that a lot of their employees will show up on their own dime. Yeah, I think that people see this as a big clubhouse or a family. Comics isn't a business; it's a clubhouse and a family.
Right.
That's why the stakes are so low, and they're not wrong. And if I'm running Marvel and I want to save money, I would think, can't some of these dickheads just get on the train and come into town and pay for their own hotel? Can I save money that way? Like, if I'm looking to save money, why wouldn't I assume that? Because that's generally what happens.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's interesting to look at it from their perspective, or from the publisher's perspective, people paying the bill. They think very little of the show. So if you as a creator do not have good networking opportunities that somebody you maybe ahead of time would like to go see, to think about a deal, if you don't have the commission angle worked out, why are you going? Fundamentally, why are you there?
Right.
You should be able to make it return. And I say it's purely as a business standpoint. Of course, from the fan's perspective, the fan wants to see you.
Right.
And I've heard, you mentioned earlier, I've heard of plenty of cons when they reach out to you, say, hey, we'd love for you to come to this show.
Yeah.
For creators go, I can't turn them down. They asked me.
Yes, you can. Yeah. You can turn them down. Yeah.
Well, the convention is trying to sell tickets to their convention. It's not about you. It's not about the creator. They're just trying to get a guest list that looks reasonable so people buy a ticket.
There's power in saying no. Because no makes you look like you're busy and you're in demand. No one will ever be mad that you said no. And I say no to most shows. I just said no to a show in Spain. Is it super flattering to be invited to Spain? Yeah. I was polite. I wrote them back immediately, which very few people do, which is another thing. But I'm professional. And I said, hey, thanks for the offer. It's a great honor. Unfortunately, I'm booked this year, maybe the next year. They're not going to not invite me next time. Even if I'm not at the top of the mountain like I might be right now, they're still going to be, oh, yeah, Sean, he was nice. He's minimal costs. He knows how to communicate, and he was honest, and he's in demand. I mean, they feel like if you say no, you're never going to get a chance ever again. And that's just not the way to think about it.
No, for sure. And it's not, now granted, you are, from what I understand, working on White Knight Holy Terror. So
I'm real mad about 9/11. I really got an axe to grind.
Yeah, that's it. That could be. I think kind of going back to, before we even start talking about some of this stuff, I think it is thinking about it from your perspective. What do you want? What do you need? What is the value of your money? It is trying to have some understanding of what the other person is thinking. So in this case, the convention is thinking, how do I sell convention tickets? The publishers are often thinking, how do I just kind of get through this marketing, boondoggle for 3 days and then move on with my life? All of these different scenarios are not they're not indicative of where the true wealth is going to lie for your business.
Right. It's the religion of poverty states that you never say no, because you're saying no to money and you need money. So if you have to say yes to a show, even if a show doesn't pay you for flight or hotel or table, you have to say yes because it's a great honor. That's bullshit. The religion of poverty also dictates you never talk about salary. You never ask what other people's salaries are. You never ask for a bonus or increase in your wages. All these things that are only helping Marvel and DC.
It's funny. For a long time, there was the unwritten rule that you couldn't talk about your salary because you'd get fired. That the company would be able to. Now, there's actually laws against that. It's a company, and it's a big myth. The company can't fire you for talking about your salary.
Right.
Now, common sense might dictate you don't want to. I mean, keep in mind the person who's asking about your salary may not be doing it for the most altruistic reasons in the world.
Right.
But having some basic sharing of numbers, you're familiar with that site Glassdoor, right?
Oh yeah.
It's always surprising to me how few creators, and that's as another piece of advice I often point people to it. They're like, well, what do you think's reasonable there? I'm like, well, it turns out Google has lots of help for you there.
Yeah.
You can just ask your question. You will get pretty accurate results. And these sites are out there to tell you what other people are making, what the range you should be looking at, and what's fair for you. I do think there's this naive view sometimes in these companies that the company will give you the best offer. That they value. You're really talented, so they're definitely going to give you the best possible offer right out the gate.
Oh shit, man! Yeah, I knew a writer, big writer. He was bitching about his rate for conventions all over the world for a year or two, and then he went into Marvel to renew his contract, and they had taken notes on all of his drunken complaints over the year, and they threw it in his face, and they said, "Well, Mr. So-and-so, you don't need a raise because according to our research, your child care costs this, your wife needs that, your house costs this." And they gathered this information from him because of things he would bitch about at shows. Now, he shouldn't have bitched about that stuff. He'd be the first one to admit that. He was an angry guy. And I'm very much of his nature, so I get it. But when he went into Marvel and they tried to say, you don't need a raise because we've calculated your so-called cost of living, and here's what you're basically telling us. He felt so pissed off, violated, like they had spied on him, and he felt stupid for, complaining publicly, which, he learned his lesson. And he never worked for them again. It actually backfired in their face because he was so upset by that. But the fact that Marvel did that can't be the first time they did that. That story tells you they must have a habit of doing this to more than one person. This is not a new thing. If it happened to my buddy, it probably happened to 5, 10, 20 people before that. It's a tactic to try to scare you into signing a contract for less money than they want to pay you. It's all it is. It's game theory. They're playing head games on you.
For sure.
And I've never heard of DC doing this. I suppose it's possible any company could. So, it is what it is. But they're as far as them looking out for your best interest, absolutely not.
Which is why I think you have to have somebody, and I think this is true for everybody out there, and including people who are not in comics, but you have to have somebody whose job it is to look out for your best interest besides yourself. And certainly you should all look out for your best interest, but find that help. And that help is not going to come in the form of a peer in this business. The help is going to come in form of a lawyer or a financial planner or somebody whose pure job it is. And you will pay for that privilege to get that information. Yeah. But it's better than getting advice from. I mean, I see people crowdfunding right now. There's people complaining about Aftershock. There's been some payment issues at Marvel. Valiant's not paying people, and I'm watching these threads. They're baffling. And what I'm seeing is these creators are going, "Hey, what should I do?" And they're like, "Well, I'll send you a DM." It's like, no, don't get, don't get negotiating and legal advice from Alex DeCampi. Go find a lawyer. Like, go find an active person whose job it is to do this. What are you doing?
Yeah. Oh, Alex. Oh, my God. She's the only one of the people that crashed in my house. And my wife, who's the nicest person ever, said to me, she's never allowed to stay here ever again. I've never heard her put a foot down like that. That's all I'll say.
It blows my mind that there isn't more. These people exist out there. They're not that. Their sole job it is to protect your ass.
Right.
Use them.
Yeah, but it's weird. Like the religion of poverty, what kicks in? Like, why do they not do that? And I don't have an answer. I'm just thinking out loud here. Why would they refuse to take an hour to make some calls? Is it scary to face their financial future? Is it just not fun? Would they rather be doing a commission? Like, what stops them from making that call?
I mean, we can brainstorm. I think there's a lot of little things. I think nobody loves to see their own mortality, and I think that's some of what it is. You're scared of going there. It's like, hang on, you got $400 to your name in a savings account?
Yeah.
you fucked up. Nobody wants to hear that.
Oh, and when you go to a financial planner, if you're making the average, I assume the average creator in comics is making 20 to 40 a year.
Sure.
The financial planner is going to be shaking their head a lot because you're describing a business to them that they can't imagine being real, honestly. The rates, with the amount of labor you put in, they'll try to be polite about it. But when I went into a financial planner, like I have one that's specifically recommended for comic book people, so they get it. So they don't shake their head or roll their eyes. And not rolling their eyes at you. They're shaking their head at the reality of some businesses that are still operating this way, which are really unfair. And they're empathizing with how tough it is for you. But when you describe your comic book financial problems to a normie, it's going to seem like you're working in a third world country.
Yeah, no, nobody would know. And I've had this, when I've owned shops, and then you have to go into the planner, and they're like, okay, so you want to take 120,000 out of your investment portfolio, and you want to buy a comic shop.
Right.
And I was like, don't do that. Like, that's a bad idea. Don't do this. And they're like, okay, well, fine. Most financial planners will look at you, and I think they're used to hearing people say crazy shit all the time. So they're like, all right, well, they move very quickly too. If you're going to do that, then you're going to need to do this and this and this, so you don't bankrupt yourself. So
right.
And it's just about giving you options. I think it's scary. I think a lot of people think that financial planners and lawyers are things that their parents deal with, and that goes against this religion of poverty, the religion of poverty.
Yeah.
The thing you want is you want an agent. You got to have an agent. An agent makes you sound special. A financial planner makes you sound old.
Right. Also, a little side note: I know people who are claiming to be agents who might live in Hollywood, and they get the right to represent an IP for free without even a contract. So there's a bunch of agents who are, let's say I'm 22 and I'm a good talker and I move out in LA and I have a few buddies in Hollywood and I'm really good at going up to people at an artist alley and I'm going to schmooze you with BarCon and I want you to give me the right to license your property for free for indefinitely. A lot of creators are like, okay, great. This is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, how do you know this guy or this girl actually has these connections? How long are you giving it to them for free? They're basically mini optioning it for you. Like they want to act as your agent, but they're hoping that you don't give it to anyone else to give them. Like you are helping them more than they're helping you, basically.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You're giving credibility in a lot of cases.
So when someone comes up to you as an agent, make sure they're actually an agent and not just some fucking guy.
Yeah.
Or girl.
That's awesome advice, actually, because there's a lot of people who have agents, and then it's like, how many clients do they have?
Right.
Just me.
Being an agent is like being a life planner or one of those people who
life coach.
Life coach. Thank you. It's like no degree required. I'm just a life coach.
I love that whole scam. I mean, and I'm sure there's some people who need it. And I'm sure there's people who are good at it, but for the love of God, I would be a terrible life coach. I mean, he comes up to me, he's like, "What should I do?" It's like, fucking clean yourself up, you miserable.
Yeah,
shit. Awful.
I'm a tough love type guy, which is why I clash with a lot of creatives, because a lot of creative people need to be coddled, and I'm just not a coddle type of person. I'm more of a tough love. So I'm not wired to be a teacher. Maybe this is why my conversations about money don't go over so well, is because I come across as aggressive and I get angry when people aren't listening.
I'm sure for sure. How about in terms, you've done a lot of contracts, and now I'm sure the proper way to do the contracts is that somebody sends you something over, you look at it yourself.
Yep.
You look up the words on Google that you don't understand, you take a best guess at it, and then you just sign it quickly.
Oh yeah, I don't even read it sometimes, Perch. I just sign it. I mean, why would someone who's offering me a contract screw me over?
Yeah.
No, I have a lawyer. She's one of there's basically 4 lawyers in comics. Mine's the only one that doesn't take a percentage. She just works by the hour, and she's fantastic. I've gotten her a lot of work. She's like a friend. I've gotten drunk with her on wine many times. She's not like a lawyer. She's like a cool lawyer. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I'll just send it to her. And, she's like, I don't know how much she costs anymore. $350, $500, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
She's worth every penny, because as much as I charge her, she catches things and asks for things. And She doesn't claim to be an agent because she's not. She doesn't live in Hollywood to try to sell my shit. But a lot of the other lawyers, the other 3 lawyers in comics, are starting to claim that they're agents and they want a percentage if they sell something. And I haven't looked into that, but that for me is a flag, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think there's this whole, tell me what you think of this. And I think it's a classic kind of lawyer take, but there are creators out there who through their agent or through kind of some of the contracts that they've signed without looking over them, they basically have signed option rights away on characters not even managed through the publisher. I mean, this is, you're kind of referring to it earlier. I know at least 2 pretty major name creators where everything they've done for Image is owned by their agent, who's not even helping them anymore. But they have option for everything.
Yeah, I think I know her.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's a complete and absolute scam.
Yeah,
and it comes down to just a read of the contract where, you know, $450, $800 would get the preliminary read,
right?
That could potentially save you, $20,000, $30,000.
Like you said in a point, get a lawyer for your agent. Lawyer first of all, financial planner and lawyer. First 2 things.
Absolutely.
Third thing is agent. And maybe you don't even need one, honestly. I mean, eventually you might if you really want to go in that direction. But if you're really good and you're firing on all cylinders, a good agent will come to you. But you still got to ask questions. I went to a dinner once, and that agent you're talking about, who represents a lot of Image stuff. I went to a dinner, and she was there, and a couple of creators who I thought were really smart and successful were at the same dinner I was, hearing her say the same thing. And I was the only one that walked away like, I don't know about her. Everyone else was like, sold. Where do I sign? They didn't even look at anything. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys are wealthy and you're other 1%ers and you're just swallowing this hook, line, and sinker. And to this day, I don't think she's doing them any favors, but they haven't figured it out yet.
It keeps happening, and then people seem surprised, and it keeps that. I think you asked, why do people sink into the this religion of poverty? Well, one reason is, it's more about celebrity than wealth,
right?
And it's this idea that it's the Twitter likes. 50 Twitter likes is worth more than financial stability,
right?
It's worth more than being able to take care of your health, because at least people love you,
right? But if you offered them, I know that you think that Twitter likes is important, but let's say I give you 20 grand more a year for you to tweet 80% less. Would they take that?
Probably not.
Like if 80% of their tweets, they hit post and it just got deleted itself. But in exchange for that, we're going to set them up better financially. Shouldn't that be their goal? Or if they say no, then they're really involved in some self-defeating behavior.
Yeah, but I think if it's a multi-step process, but you can find yourself at the place of, I don't make a lot of money. I will never make a lot of money. None of my friends are making money. But look, people love us online. We have friends there. Yeah. That's what I'm going to steer toward. Yeah. Hey, if I have really bad health problems, then the people who love me will surely do a GoFundMe and I'll squeak through somehow. But and you follow this thing down where you get people later in their career and you say something like, hey, we'll give you 25% more if you delete your social media account. You just focus completely on work. Because, and there are companies, by the way, doing this, not in comics.
Yeah.
There are many who are offering a bonus. I know of one just a month ago is offering a bonus for the employees to delete their social media accounts.
Oh man. When is DC going to offer that?
But it's like, hey, and if we catch you, then you're signing this on that you're going to give us the money back, potentially be terminated.
That's great.
Coming on.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And the entire idea is twofold. We believe that there's so much distraction at work happening by social media going on. Even though we block it, people are on their phones, it's still happening. We're going to get more productive workers.
It's a time suck. It's Jonathan Haidt. He's a writer. Yeah, he's talking about smartphones and how they've made us dumber. And was kind of like a TED talker type of guy who goes on Joe Rogan and writes really great books. He's a professor as well, but he can go into amazing detail about why phones have fucked us over more than we're currently understanding right now, and the need for attention and the need for likes. It's almost like there's a crack epidemic right now, but it seems not threatening because it's just a cell phone. What's the big deal? But I feel like in 50 years, we'll look back on this and be like, we had a crack epidemic, but none of us knew it. And we all had the crack, which is our phone. And we'll tell our grandkids, like, yeah, you had a phone, you're able to this, or that, you get misinformation, it is what it is. And the kids will be dumbfounded with how society managed to survive. I think that we're seriously ODing on this stuff right now. We don't even know how much it's hurting us.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. So I'm curious to see the reaction. I mean, it'll be a couple months before we really see how it played out, in this company that's doing it. Right. Talking to the person in HR, the surprise was, right, bonus, I believe, was $12,000, which isn't a lot of money, but still, right. $12,000 for free just to delete Twitter. I mean, yeah. In some cases, I'd pay them $12,000. But anyway, yeah. So far, the uptake has been tiny. Yeah. Less than 10% of the employees are doing it.
There's no takers.
No takers.
They'd rather be able to tweet freely than have $12,000 a year. Yeah. $12,000 is like 2 big family vacations.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Wow. They're that addicted. Like,
now, it's very easy to back into that, to go, well, I don't want the company telling me what I can do. And sure, right. No big brother overreach, no right. doubt about it. And yet, yeah, at the end of the day, whoever's asking you to do it, it is self-destructive behavior. It does get in the way of your future and your success in most cases. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
I think that the people view social media as a right that was given to us by our forefathers. Right. They see it as like, oh, if you squash that, then you're squashing everything that the forefathers believed in. It's like, I'm not sure George Washington saw the benefit of Twitter or Grindr or any of these other apps.
Definitely Grindr, but not Twitter.
Like, we had freedom of speech. You get as angry as you want, write angry letters. You can, meet, gather, do sit-ins, whatever the fuck you want, burn your bras. Like, we had all this shit up until 10 years ago, and it was fine. But God forbid you take away your phone, your ability to, digitally burn your bra, and then 50 people favorite it, and you don't actually it doesn't actually do anything. God forbid that's the thing that gets you all pissed off, that your rights are being limited.
Pretty crazy. Yeah. Hey, speaking of which, we'll get to politics. I'm curious. So to play this one out. So again, this is the kind of topic that people absolutely hate. And I continue, even while I'm talking to you, I see little notifications, people coming in, of people mailing me, pissed at that. The fans are so pissed at that video. Right. About why the creators don't understand why you're upset. But be that as it may. All right. So here's another one that would piss people off. Right. So Trump was taken off Twitter before the election. Right. And I totally agree with the logic of, these companies. Yes, it's a private company, but still, it's counter to their measure. He should, I don't agree with him being taken off, all that kind of stuff. Sorry, he was taken off after the election. I'm getting it wrong. Mm-hmm. He was taken off after the election. Here's the thing, though. Do you think Trump being off Twitter, because it plays into what we were just talking about, do you think Trump being away from it helps him or hurts him when all is said and done? The logic people say is it hurts him because he's able to get the word out and everything else. But do you think that him being removed from Twitter, now again, forget about the efficacy of it, whether he should be doing it, whether private companies should do that, all the rest, just purely Trump. Do you think Trump himself is more powerful for his own health, his own sanity, if he has access to that or not?
And not his bottom line?
Not his bottom line, just his own mental being.
All right, so question, though, before I answer. Does he really get bothered by trolls? Does he feel the negative repercussions of what he says?
It's true.
Does he lose sleep over Twitter at all? He might have people handling it for him.
We don't know. I'd love to know. So there's been a lot of speculation about this. I guess where I'm coming from, this is parallel, and I know a lot of you listening are pissed at this point, but you would hear these stories, and I'm going from one that Melania, or his wife, said. Right. Was that he would be up sometimes 2, 3 in the morning on his phone looking at responses to his tweets.
I believe that. Angry. Yeah. I think a lot of people who like him would also believe that he does that.
Yeah. Yep. So when he was removed from Twitter, maybe that was the healthiest break he could have gotten for himself. I don't know.
I see. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's my logic. I use this comparison in this way. Mark Brooks, going from Trump to Mark Brooks, which they're almost identical people, so it makes sense. Anyway, Mark Brooks is obviously, he's had a career doing these covers. He makes good coin now making covers. He's able to, what I've seen him at shows, he's able to sell art, and he makes good money for himself. Yeah. every minute he's on Twitter having fun, because he said that he enjoys kind of trolling and screwing with the CG people and everything. It makes him happy. It's fun.
Yeah.
He is taking money out of his pocket. If you add up the hours he spent doing that, how many covers did he not get done that he could have gotten done?
Yeah.
I'll bet it adds up to a lot.
Maybe he does it when his ink dries. Maybe it is no toll at all.
Yeah, maybe you can take one hand and kind of wave your hand on the paper on the other.
I will say, I do, just for the record, I hate to qualify something, but I am friends with Mark. I like Mark. Yeah. I've known him for almost 20 years now. I was there at San Diego when What's His Crotch came by and challenged him to a fight when security came by or whatever.
What, did you capture on your phone? Did you do a video?
No, I texted you. I'm like, oh my God, this incident just happened. And then it blew up on Twitter. Yeah. Like, I was literally there. I'm never there for anything. I'm not cool anymore, but I was there for that. And I like him. I like Mark. He and I don't have a lot in common. But I does he actually losing money? I would argue he is. But next time I see him, I'll bring it up and see what his counter would be to that, because I'm curious what he would say.
No, I'm sure. And there's several. He could say, yeah, I know, but it's not all about money. I have legitimate fun doing this. I get an extra bounce in my step by doing the hours of tweeting. I wonder, and I've challenged some people with this before, of if you could add up all the time you spent, just picture you're doing. In fact, your phone will tell you how much time you spent on Twitter.
Yeah.
So deep down in the settings. Right. I did this with an art. I'm not going to say who because he'll be upset. But deep down in the settings, we looked at the time we spent on Twitter, and it was 48 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, that's almost an hour. So if you had all those hours back, that's almost 7 hours a week, basically 6 hours a week. How much could you have gotten done?
Right.
In that time.
So back to my example, if you're making $200 a page, then your time is worth $200 a day. So if you lose 6 hours on Twitter, that's like $150 to $180 of productive time you've lost. So that example I went through 30 minutes ago, talking about if you're making $200 a day, if you lose 6 hours a week on Twitter, you're basically losing $180.
Yeah.
It's worth paying Twitter $180 to have the access to it. If you phrase it that way, people would say, no, absolutely not. That's what's so interesting about it. They don't calculate it that way, but that is what it is, because it's a time suck.
I would legitimately be happy to hear. I would love for a Mark Brooks to come back to you. You should ask him. So, by the way, this math, as we put it all out, we came to the conclusion that with 48 minutes a day and kind of spinning it out to a year, the person was losing half a month a year.
Yeah.
Twitter.
Yeah.
So half a month of productive working time, which doesn't include sleep, but half a month.
Yeah.
So, in fact, if you factor in sleep and eating and other things, you're about a month a year that was going away. And that's an issue. I mean, in many people, for somebody like Mark Bagley, that's like 20 comics that he could do that. I mean,
poor Mark Bagley.
But I think it would be, in many ways, I'd love to see. I think there would be one of two reactions. Either the person would look at it kind of in horror, and you'd see the dawning realization of where they've wasted their life on their face. Or, and I suspect this is what Mark would say, yeah, but I have fun, and it's not all about money. I like to have fun.
Right.
And if you could look at that and said, yeah, it was worth, whatever it was, $200 a day, all that kind of stuff. You could, if you had that kind of metric, and the fun to me, I mean, some people, they go and they gamble, and some people smoke cigars, and some people, get prostitutes. Some people go to Arby's for some reason. My fun, your fun is going and screwing around on Twitter, and it's worth, $10,000 a year to you.
But I'd say to Mark is, wouldn't you rather spend 6 extra hours a week playing with your kids? And of course you would say yes. That's a cheap question. Yeah. But people are allowed to dick around for 5-minute intervals. Sure. They're allowed coffee breaks. You and I talked about this before.
Yeah, for sure.
Coffee break is like 5 minutes. A Twitter break is maybe a little bit more than that. It's still a time suck.
It's we did this. We started the video talking about how to make money in comics and be successful. And I think looking at where the distractions in your life are going, looking at the money stealers, the kind of the invisible money stealers in your life, that maybe is one of the key pieces to everything.
Yeah, I agree. The last thing I want to talk about is, once you've made it in comics, how do you stay there?
Yeah, hookers and blow.
Yeah.
No, clearly, when you made it in comics, your best move is to negotiate a deal with DC and get them to say you're coming, and then proceed to piss off every single fan by wrecking characters.
Honestly, the first half of that plan was pretty tight.
Yeah.
The second half, it went kind of off the rails. So let's define, what is, when you made it, what does it mean to make it? I'd say you're at 50 to 80 a year consistently. You have editors who are looking out for you, feeding you work. You don't need to be an A-lister. You can be a B-lister and still be like a solid fill-in guy that gets the job done. That's having made it. You're not a superstar, but you can still make it. So I put you between 50 and 80 a year, which puts you in the top 10%, probably top 5% at that point. So very few people actually make it. So how do you stretch that out? If you have a style that's locked in time, people might be able to say, oh, he's dated now. That could be a liability.
For sure.
I hate to say that, because like, if people say Walt Simonson is a dated style, I think they're full of shit, because I think he's Walt Simonson. He is beyond style. I think Mike Mignola, a lot of guys, like, no, they're timeless because they've gone their own way, which is a good thing.
True.
But yeah, if you have a style that's locked in a certain era, that is technically a liability. If you can learn to write for yourself or project manage, or at least talk with writers you like and try to set up gigs for yourself that you feel good about, that you have an instinct for what's going to sell, what's going to be relevant. Those are all really helpful skills. And I don't know if you can like teach those skills necessarily. What do you think?
I think I think there's two parts to it. I think you have to have a good teacher, in this case, a mentor or somebody like that who's, who you trust, who's willing to talk to you. Then you also have to have the ability to listen. And that second part's probably the hardest.
Right.
I think there's people out there who give good advice. There's enough of them out there right now. You have books, if you want to achieve a certain plateau of wealth, there's a lot of resources out there to help you, and they're not that hard to find, but you personally have to be willing to seek those out and then listen to the advice.
Right.
It's why, and not to wade into all the other pieces of it, but the piece of the Jordan Peterson advice that I always thought was very strong, that other people, almost any wealthy person would tell you with raising kids and kind of getting people into it, is the idea of you make your bed every day. Yeah. If you make your bed every day and you train yourself to do that, you establish a habit, and it becomes something that nobody wants to. I mean, who wants to mess around with sheets every morning? Right. Unless you're fucking on them. But anyway, sorry, I'm just kidding. But not really. But anyway, nobody wants to do this. But these habits of doing things you don't want to do. Yeah. There's so many pieces to it. They feel like what dad or grandpa would do. They feel like they feel like these old fashioned things, like I should be punk rock. I shouldn't have to make my bed. But those pieces, if you could get yourself there, then I think it's the rest comes along actually pretty easily. The crazy part is a lot of people who start to get wealth, it snowballs. And I know so many people that once they hit a certain range, it speeds up. The second half of being rich is easier than the first half.
Sorry, snowballs how? Can you explain that more?
Well, so once it's funny because I see people, and there's a whole model around, at least in technology, of people, getting from 0 to 100K is a grind in a lot of cases, unless you went to the right college and you do it. But if you're coming in low and you're trying to work your way up the ladder, 0 to 100K actually takes a while. 100K to 250 takes half the time. It's much faster. And it's because in addition to the company, you started to buy property, you started to invest things, you're in the stock market. Now other things are working for you. It's not just all about you. Right. And then that third tier, that 250 to 1 million, tends to go even faster. If you get there, maybe the best way to say it is, when you start your career, you figure like you have to make all the money yourself. Right. And at some point you make enough money, you realize you can have other people making the money for you. Right. And that's where the wealth accelerates. Well, so I agree with you, but with comics and creative types, I feel like it doesn't snowball. I think they have a big hit, a spike one year, and then it goes down. I don't think it accumulates like it would if you're in tech or if you have an MDA and people that you're dealing with. Like, I agree with you, Perch, but I think a lot of people in comics, if they ever get a spike of income, they see it as the last spike ever. And usually it's a self-fulfilled prophecy. Okay, so I by the way, I agree with that. But then the trick is you got to start making your money out of comics.
Outside of comics?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Use the money you make in comics to make money elsewhere.
Right.
You can keep making money in comics. I've got a question for you. So do you think people who have achieved some level of success and stability inside of comics, for those people, do they age or do they get rolled out of the industry like others, or do they seem to get locked in? I'm asking this question terribly. I guess
some do, some don't.
Yeah.
Like I think John Romita Jr. He seems to be timeless, and he's royalty in a lot of ways too. So maybe he's different. But the people I know who have been top 5%, they are not looking for Twitter likes. They're not networking to be all about the next big hot topic thing. They're people with small networks who can buckle down and do work and have good talent, and they have consistency. I think that's the secret here. It's not about getting Alex Campy to like you. It's can you actually do a book that's on time and good and have a following? You don't have to be an A-lister, but you just have to be consistent and just stick around. A lot of creators who've been around for a long time, I think you learn to ignore flare-up creators, like someone who's hot all of a sudden goes away. People like that are gone in 5 years. Annoying editors or social media, SJW, whatever. Like those people are popular for a bit and then they're powerless. I think the people with longevity realize they take a long term look at. Sorry.
Yeah,
they have a long view of this basically, and they sort of ignore the fashionable flare-up spike distractions that end up happening. Maybe it feels that way because people who are like that are my age and older, and they're not as interested in social media. So maybe in 100 years, this will all be different for all I know. But yeah, the guys I know who make it, they don't obsess over bullshit. They're not obsessed with social media and likes. They just like to work. They're good. They're talented. They have tight, important relationship where it matters. But they're not looking to go to BarCon and level up by talking to the next big thing, because they've seen the next big thing flame out over and over again. They know they're going to outlast most of their writers, most of their editors, most of the CEOs. John Romita Jr., how many people have owned Marvel since he's been working? How many editors have you had? How many have been fired? How many marketing people? He has outlasted all of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to know, is if you're good and on time, then you probably can do this for a while. Even though the weather's going to change a lot, you're going to maintain.
It's remarkable how people who just stably put in work, despite all the advice of you got to get on a network, you got to gossip, you got to know who's going, you got to manage the game like you see on TV.
Right.
The people who are the boring, Romita is a great example. Ron Lim is another one who, does anybody, what even can somebody say about Ron Lim on a personal gossip level? Does anybody have any idea? The guy just draws shit, and he disappeared for a while, and people are like, oh, he must have gotten rolled out. No, he was doing stuff for Disney. He was doing Princess books and all this other kind of crap for 8 years. I saw Ron Lim a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, and the guy just doesn't, he seems like a very happy guy.
Yeah.
He had no drama, nothing around him at all.
Yeah. Who does that really well is James Tinian.
Yeah.
Who,
great example.
I like a lot. I wish I could, I knew him as more. And then whenever I see him, it's always pleasant. I've known him for a while, back when he was a student or whatever. And he's like, oh, there's a bunch of cool people in comics. And he's like, Sean, you're one of the cool people. And I go, what does that mean? And he goes, I don't know. The fact that you don't want to be cool makes it even cooler. I'm like, thanks, James. But, his street cred is there. His YA stuff's great. I have a lot of friends a lot of people who just read, who love James's stuff. And he seems stable and happy, and like he's got a steady hand on the wheel, and he's diversifying outside of the big two. Yeah. And I even asked him, I said, I've got this White Knight universe. If you ever want to write for my stuff and kill off a character, like you can do something with, I don't know, Clayface you could never do in the main line. Let me know anytime. Open door policy. And he's busy, and he said, I'm focused on other stuff. I don't really want to do capes now, which is totally fine. I get that. I'm happy that he could turn it down, honestly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think about James as like the beacon of who to be like, or if I was a writer, who I would want to be like, you know?
Well, I mean, James is a great example because so let's an alternate reality where he didn't do the House on the Lake that he did, and he didn't go start doing his private work that he's doing now, or any of these other things. I think he does a lot outside, or in the last year, I think he's doing a lot of things people don't really know. Beyond Substack, he's got a lot of irons in the fire.
Right.
But imagine he didn't do any of that. Instead, he got this flash in the pan success with Batman, following up Tom King. Tom King had thoroughly polarized the audience at that point. So James comes in. People were naturally predisposed to just want to love whatever he did because he wasn't Tom King. So there was that initial boost of everything else. And then I think he wrote some stories people liked. He introduced some characters that people liked. So imagine if he would have just doubled down and said, I'm going to be the Batman writer for the next 5 years and just do that. He would be one of those people we'd be talking about as a likely somebody who's going to burn out quick because he was just he basically took his career and given it to DC and said, you can manage it. Yeah.
You know, it's funny because if you were a manager, you could have said to him 2 years ago, you know, James, I know that you're taking over a book that it's not ideal. I know Tom King's being pushed out or whatever. But if you could do this well, you could ride this out for 2 or 3 solid years and then bring your readers wherever. Like, it's not bad advice to say you should take Batman for 3 years and kill it. But it's also not bad advice to say there's danger here. Maybe diversify. You can still do Batman, but do other stuff at the same time. I don't know what the better advice is, honestly.
Well, I don't think he had to give up on Batman. I mean, he wound up walking away from it, but I think you see the creators who tend to flame out are the ones who seem to outsource their career to Marvel and DC, and they view it as I made it. Yeah. I'm at the top of the pile now, and now I'm in your hands. Yeah, and the publishers are not in love with them in the same way, and they absolutely will fuck them over for the next hot thing, and those are the people who burn out.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend, honestly.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you think we saved anybody any money here, or?
I don't know. I feel like maybe there's only 20 people listening who are actually going to know what to do with this information and carry it forward. I think most people are going to be like, oh, Mr. Wealthy Sean bragging about his income and just finding reasons to think of talking about the culture war. A bunch of people are going to write to Donnie and Mark Brooks and say, Sean's shit talking you, which I'm not, because I like both those guys. It's just the nature of this whole thing, you know?
Well, I tell you what, this is what we'll do. You talk to Mark.
Yep.
He's shown a tendency to come on podcasts. The two of us three of us will talk.
Oh, I don't know if I want to be.
Okay. So we'll do this, but then you just don't show up. See?
Oh, nice. You want me to ditch Mark? Busy. Yeah. Just leave him in your hands and you rip through him.
And I'll just,
no, if I don't show up, he'll be pissed at that. I don't know. He podcasts a lot differently than me. I don't know if his brand is the same as my brand. So I don't know if Mark would want me on his podcast.
That's fair. All right. Well,
because I'm not about dunking on the chuds.
Well, there's always a chud. There's been chuds for 50 years. There'll be chuds for 50 more years. They change. The part that cracks me up is part of dunking on the chud used to be, hey, you little poor pricks. I bought a Tesla. I'm fancy, and now suddenly that sucks.
It's funny because Mark has it. I think a nice car and a Rolex and stuff that he does talk about a lot.
Yeah, if he has a Tesla, man, you gotta get rid of it. That Elon, things do it in a hurry. One day it's great. One day you're trying to get rid of your Tesla and replace it with a Ford truck.
All right, so let me put you under the knife a bit.
Okay.
So I talked about I hinted at the money I make.
Mm-hmm.
Perch makes double. He literally does. A guy that makes what you make. You say, I owned a comic book shop or I own comic book shops. I don't know if you own multiple at one time. Would you just finish up your extremely lucrative job, come to a comic book shop clubhouse, and just hang out and then ring up customers? Like, paint a picture for me here.
That is completely the goal. Yeah, that's the dream. No, let's see.
Sure, you're way too overqualified to own comics, honestly.
No, but I got a level. All right.
Who are you?
You know enough. The gig I'm in right now is got about another year to it.
Yep.
It's been a gift, no doubt about it. Lots of happy moments. Everybody is happy. Everything I do every single day is happy. Whenever I text you, I'm having a great time. So.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No
But
sarcasm.
it's been good for my family. It's been positive. It gives you that financial stability to then go off and do some of the crazy ass shit that you're going to do. And so I'm thinking about what to do next, and absolutely get the store open up. I don't want to open it up here in the Dallas area, but open up the store, have be the clubhouse, start publishing comics, do some of this stuff. I am fully aware it's not going to make anywhere remotely close to the money I'm making now, because I've done it for 30 years. I know what we'll bring in.
Right.
But all the same, that's the way I want to, this is going to sound grim and dark now, but you asked for it. That's the way I want to roll out the last few years I've got.
So when you would go to a shop, because knowing what you're capable of and what you bring in, it's hard to imagine you working at a comic book shop where you're behind the register ringing up Funkos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard for me to square what I know of you with comic book store guy.
Well, you're knowing me 15 years beyond when I did a lot of that. I mean, I ran the shop, and running the shop didn't often mean working the shop, mean paying people to run the shop. And I would go in, and I knew how to run a register. And honestly, it's fun. And this is, maybe it sounds sad and pathetic, but sometimes the things that we enjoy that are kind of just guilty pleasures and fun aren't the things we should be doing in our lives, because they're not the best things for our family or for ourselves. So, the way we would talk about this in tech would be, it is fun to go to a convention and do, 12 shots of something, and then, more. And it was fun in that moment, but it's probably not a good idea for you the next day.
Yeah.
So that's a more quick reason of sitting behind the counter. It's fun. I enjoy it. I love talking to people in the shop. I love doing these things. The only reason this channel exists is because there's this need to actually still talk to people, even though it's a one-sided conversation. That's weird, but I love it. Yeah. So I'm trying to scratch that itch any way I can.
Right. So next question for you. How you seem to be well connected in comics. How many creators text you or call you on a regular basis?
20, 25 maybe.
Okay. Did they reach out to you?
A little bit. Sometimes both. I'll meet somebody, and sometimes it strikes up. It's good. It's, we have a good conversation wherever there's a signing or at a retailer convention or something like that. Right. It's just that, it hits off. And I was probably better about that years ago, where I would try and actually make friends with some of these people, and because it was fun to kind of learn. But I've told the stories about taking people out for drinks and kind of these environments and everything else. As time has gone by, and maybe this is just getting older, I have a small group of people now that I enjoy. Right. Obviously, I've enjoyed going out with you.
Thank you.
Had a great dinner with Ben Templesmith. I would go out with him any day of the week. Just fun conversation.
Yeah, Ben's good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That list is shrinking fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many people, when you have someone that you're in contact with in comics and they start to annoy you, do you ever tell them? You seem like you don't want to, in your professional life, you don't want to confront people with negativity. It seems like you're the type of guy that just steps back and waits it out.
Well, other than, what I was up to the last week, so
well, then there's that.
So generally speaking, I think I've been busy, so it's kind of been a weird last year. But generally speaking, I'd say like, hey, probably there's somebody else who can help you, and I'd like to believe, and maybe I'm kidding myself, that they people were aware, and I was ready to cut the cord.
Right. So these people who talk to you and they want your advice and wisdom, but they won't come on your podcast. Mm-hmm. Doesn't that make you feel used?
I get it. It doesn't make me feel used. I think that, unfortunately, I think the podcast, because I have a point of view, and this is, no shot. So, for example, one person I like, the Sasha, who does the Casually Comics. I love that channel. It's great. It's positive. At one point, I think I said that, I don't know how she does it, where she could balance kind of what she does. I have opinions, so I say things, and in saying it, I'm going to piss people off, and I'm going to make it hard for people to come on the show. I get it. Yeah. What I tell them is it doesn't matter. The crazy one is there's I don't remember whose podcast it was, but he interviewed EBS one day and Mark Wade 2 days later. Mm-hmm. And there was no like outrage that, this channel had to be shut down, or why are you talking to this guy or that guy? Some people bitch in the comments, but people always bitch in the comments. So it doesn't really matter. If you're a creator, go where you have a good conversation. Yeah. And I think that there is this feeling of like, if I go on the wrong show, then, Tess Fowler is going to get mad at me, and then, then I'm in trouble. And it's like, I mean, life's too short to give it. But yes, there's a couple people out here who've called me for advice and chatted, and I would love to talk to them on the show. And you should
on the record
do that, because I know you're listening right now.
Yeah. Because the only big pro that came on your show before me was Brett Booth. You did like a 3-part session with Brett. Brett, I like Brett. He's a talker though.
Yeah, he's got a lot. He's a fascinating guy. Brian Edward Hill went on earlier.
I love that interview. Yeah, is Brian working in comics anymore? Or is he escaped us?
He did something for Marvel around Wakanda. There was a show. I think there's a guy who I think writes really good stuff, and Marvel is like, well, we've got to give him Black Panther. Yeah, and I just wish somebody would go, hey, Marvel, why is that exactly? Why do you have to do that? Why don't you give him Iron Man? Because I think he's quite a hell of an Iron Man. But
racist.
Maybe just saying.
Yeah.
But I've talked to you. I think the biggest problem now is I know there's a bunch of people who've reached out, and I haven't had time for them. So I'm the dick in this case. So.
Let's talk about forecasting for 2023. Mm-hmm. Let's make some Conan O'Brien in the year 2000 type predictions for 2023.
I love it.
So right now, you mentioned before the amount of people complaining about getting paid. Mm-hmm. Taking over 30 days. I heard that Marvel's accounts payable team was let go, and people who are expecting to get paid this week are not getting paid. Mm-hmm. So that seems like a bad indicator for 2023.
I think that Disney, there's a Wall Street Journal out there that I think or maybe it's Forbes, I don't know. But anyway, they're talking about the layoffs at Disney. Yeah. And they're talking about the 4,000 odd people that are going, and they've just begun that process. Yeah. And so I think Marvel is going to enter an absolute world of hurt of not enough staff. You're the same kind of crunch I think DC had with not enough editors to handle everything. Marvel's absolutely getting there. Accounts payable people missing, lawyers missing. You're going to see more errors and things going out. You're going to see, and I think unfortunately it feeds itself. Some of what Marvel's banked on is some of these licensing deals that they've done. Mm-hmm. They're firing the people who did those deals. So that's not going to help.
Sorry, licensing deals, like not the Alex Ross book, but
no, like tie-ins. Like they do a Midnight Suns game, and so then part of the deal is that they're going to do some comics. They're going to do a co-brand and co-share. But I know at least one of the guys who did that for the Guardians game and for the Midnight Suns game was fired or laid off.
Right. Yeah.
Huh. So who's going to do that job now? I don't know. But that was money that was helping Marvel. So I think Marvel's in for a pretty shitty year. Yeah.
So what about like second or third tier publishers like Dark Horse, IDW? Do you think they're going to survive 2023?
Those two will. I think IDW is they always manage to find a little bit more investment. There's people into that company so much that it's going to be hard to walk away.
It's insane. Every year I think IDW is going to go under, and they keep their mutant ability is like hanging on to the bottom rung and surviving. I'm glad. I've got friends who work there, and I don't want them to go away, but I'm always prepped for them to go away.
I think if you get investors, it's totally boring financial talk now, but if you get certain investors that are either angel investors or financial investors, they will not let you fail. Yeah, because they just can't. They do take the mentality of, I'll ride this money all the way down to the bottom, so I'll just keep putting in money.
All right. Yeah.
IDW's got some of those. Dark Horse has the parent company, but smaller companies. To your point, I think if you're Aftershock, if you're that's a bad place to be right now. Valiant. It's on fumes. There's definitely some small companies going out this year.
What about do you think there'll be a lot of licenses that are going to be available for purchase? Like there'll be opportunity in all of this chaos?
Absolutely. I think they'll get swept up. I know at least one company, I shouldn't say, is trying to sweep up a lot of licenses and is looking at this stuff, just kind of licking the chops and hungry.
Right. Yeah. I heard you and I are trying to buy up a lot of licenses too.
Yeah, I did hear something about that. Yeah.
What else for 2023?
What do you think's coming? How do you think we're here doing this, and this time next year? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think of the few third or fourth tier companies will be gone. I think you'll see a bunch of new players hit. I know Whatnot is going to be making some big moves.
Mm-hmm.
I know they've got investors for at least a year and a half or 2 years. They can probably play a good game. I think there's a spot. There could be a second Image Comics, like a competitor, to do that differently or better than Image. I think Heritage, I heard the auction site, is thinking about getting into publishing too, and they've got deep pockets in theory.
I can 100% confirm that.
Okay, so Heritage Comics might be a big thing. Whatnot Comics could be a big thing. And if smaller companies like Aftershock, whatever, are going away, that's shelf space opening up. I just hope these companies bring in something new that has a digital strategy and has a better marketing plan and is less obsessed with social media and likes and all that stuff.
I hear that Viz is at least making some moves, and I need to reach out to. I do know somebody in there that they're looking at going much bigger in 2023. If
Viz gets into Western comics, that would sign me up. Give me a check. I mean, I know manga doesn't pay that well over there. If they're used to getting people for $50 a page in Japan, that rate won't cut it here. But if they wanted to take a slice out of Western comics, I'd love to see that plan. I'd love to see that pitch deck.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do. I know that there's action happening there, and that would be fascinating to see.
Right.
The fascinating part about Viz is, as a company, they've established all these channels into the big block stores where if they were to start making comics, or even like, what about a world where one of these companies that has some decent licenses basically gives up most of their business and just hands it to Viz to distribute in print, and they're just going to kind of create the content for cheap, and then Viz is going to go take it out. But instantly you would have the most distributed comics in the market. Yeah. That'd be crazy.
I mean, if this came to me and they're like, "We heard you were a big player and we want you to do something for us," I'd say, "Well, you're going to have to pay more than $50 a page." Would Viz even want to pay that? I mean, they don't need me in a way. I mean, Viz can do what they would do. They can get in a market. They can build a wedge into Western comics without having to pay a lot for it. They just have to do a better job than Marvel and DC, which shouldn't be hard.
What if they came to you and said, like, you had your successful crown of plot holes, your crowdfunded book, and I know you have other things going on there, but if Viz came to you and said, "Hey, we're going to take this thing out. We'll guarantee minimum 400K, publishing run, and you get 25%."
So advanced 20, yeah. So if the numbers are going to be huge, yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah. I'm all about a disruptor, as are you.
Yeah.
Just to piss off Marvel and DC.
I think we might see some of that.
Yeah, man, Viz. Here's my email right now, Viz.
Well, so I don't think this would happen in 2023. But what if Viz went to DC and said, "We're going to take over your trade business. Keep printing copies, do whatever you're doing in digital, whatever." But
so if DC is going to outsource their trade stuff to Viz,
and we'll get you all these other stores.
If I was DC, I would say, do it, take it.
Yeah,
I think it's a benefit to it's a little embarrassing, but it is what it is right now.
Yeah, well, and I mean, in a world of cost cutting and kind of optimizing your business, I mean, funny part is, if you're a DC management person, you would go, "Hey, this is a win-win for us. We're going to focus on our core business, which is creating the content. It's going to be able to be printed, put in a page. It's going to be able to license for movies, but the distribution is not part of it. Discovery Warner is not a distribution company in this sense. It's not a print house." So we're going to distance ourselves from that part of the business and hand it over to somebody else to run and manage and have the headache.
Right. No, I hope that both companies start licensing out their IPs to third parties who can manage it.
That'd be great.
It's embarrassing if some of the biggest titles from Marvel, they like Fantastic Four, the best Fantastic Four book in the last 20 years isn't even a Marvel book. I imagine that pisses off the editors, but the people at the top, the suits who are making money, they don't give a shit.
Oh no, not at all. It's still, I mean, because the funny part about it is that entire book and everything that was done, people inside the comic business, YouTubers, all of us, looking at the details are like, yeah, it's embarrassing. Everybody buying that book, it's a Marvel book.
That's fair.
That's how they see it. They don't see any other stuff. And Marvel's like, I just getting the money.
Yeah, that's fair.
Crazy.
Tell me about you wanting to shut down your channel. What's going on here? How long are you going to keep this going, man?
I
think admitted recently that you said in a very honest moment, sorry to interrupt you, that you were pretty sure that what you are doing is not helping comics.
Yeah. Not at the level it should. So, I mean, all the stuff we've talked about the advice and where the money can go and all the rest. I think entertaining myself by making videos in the car and then throwing them up is not, I mean, there's a couple people who've enjoyed them, and I'm sure on an individual level it's been good. That's not moving the needle in anything. I hold no illusions. I hear some of these other channels like, I'm saving the universe. No, the fuck you are. This isn't doing that.
Yeah. Well, what you did help me. So the way I came across you was, I don't know, someone was doing a review of my book. Maybe it was Wes. And I'm like, all right, what else does Wes have to say? And he kept having this guest on with the Winnie the Pooh thing. And I'm like, man, this is my favorite character on the show. I wonder if this guy has his own, like, I don't know what this guy does, but he seems to be way overqualified to be doing a comic book podcast.
Yeah.
And at the time I contacted you, like, I had no idea who you were, what you made, what your skill set was. And I was like, man, can you help me plan some White Knight stuff? Like, I'll fly you to Maine and talk, blah, blah, blah. And I thought I was offering you a sweet deal, but I didn't realize that was all like a step down for you on a normal day.
Don't look at it that way. No, it's fun doing this. I wish I had a better mic, in the car. I feel it. I hear people like this. The audio quality sucks. I mean, obviously I'm talking to you in the studio now with a nice mic, but but in general, what are you going to do? I can't be mic'd up with like a nice little boom mic in the car while I'm driving around.
Yeah. I do think that a lot of your topics stem from the anger of 5%. Whether it's the left or right. And I feel like you and I both fall into the trap of our brains keep revolving around the topics that the angry minorities keep espousing on both sides, right?
Yeah, and just for the context, before anybody freaks out, he means minority of the audience.
I mean blacks and Asians, Perch. Let's get it right.
I always try and help people out.
I'm fine. I got this. No, of course, the minority, the radical left, radical right, whatever. Yeah. Like I get sucked into it too, and I know that 90% of the normies don't care about that shit. 90% of the real dollar comics comes from Wednesday Warriors, people coming in. They don't follow me on Facebook or Twitter or you. They don't care. They just buy their shit and they leave. Like, that's the bread and butter. And thank God for those people. But the discourse, the energy in discussion is hijacked by the extremes. So if I had a channel, I could see the temptation to dive into extreme thinking, which I think is what your channel spends a lot of time doing. But then I would say to you, to give you a little pushback, aren't you becoming part of the problem by fueling that?
Yeah.
If you know most normies don't care, why aren't you speaking to most normies? Why are you speaking to the energized 5%?
No, look, you're right. And I'll keep using the same person. So this is why Sasha's channel is so successful and good. She's speaking to the 95%.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think there's, I guess I'd rather, I mean, I've made my own trap of responding to emails and other things, and people I think the thing that would catch me, and I realize it's a flawed way of thinking. I hate to see people pissed on all sides. I hate that there's this in many cases misunderstanding, and it kind of stems from that they don't understand why you're upset video. But it's like Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy could not give a single shit about what people on YouTube say.
Right.
And not because she's arrogant. She very well may be. She probably is. A lot of rich people in that position are super douchey. I mean,
yeah.
But because her day consists of being picked up in a private car and driven from her luxury house in a gated community to the Disney lot, where she then gets to have high-level meetings, and she has, to my knowledge, she has at least 4 admins, and they bring her latte, and she hears pitches, and then somewhere somebody goes, there's some people on YouTube who say you're a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you know what? I can't hear you over the sound of my $8 million contract this year. And she does her thing. And I think it drives people crazy because they're like, well, doesn't she understand she's killing Star Wars? And she would say, don't you understand? I'm enjoying my latte right now.
Well, this is a great video topic for you. A day in the life of Kathleen Kennedy. Just lay it out for why this might be a good.
Yeah.
When you strike a topic that hits a nerve, you usually do 2 or 3 extra videos. So
you're
probably going to be the one that came out today. You're probably going to be doing a couple.
You're probably right.
Cleanup videos. You might as well say what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, listen, Kathleen Kennedy, what's her life like? She gets up, she's got a limo, she's got 4 admins, she's got a latte, and maybe once a week someone says you're not really popular on YouTube. How much time does she actually? I mean, if her time's worth $4,000 an hour, she can't justify thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's not that the trolls are wrong. I very much am against what's been going on with Star Wars. I am on the trolls' side here.
Absolutely suck. They're unwatchable. By and large, it is terrible entertainment. I 100% agree. But you know what? She's had a career in Hollywood for a long time. She's been paid well for a very long time. She is immune to this stuff. When I say immune, I mean she does not think about it, and she's her mind is now protecting herself from even wanting to think about it.
Right.
I've got a friend, a very good friend. He was a mentor, so I have my own mentors. I've got a guy. Love the guy. Super smart architect. He is a billionaire. And his life is so radically different from mine. And he goes, he tells me, we catch up the other day, and I'm like, oh, where are you? He's like, oh, I'm in Hawaii right now. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, how long are you staying there? He's like, well, I bought a house last week. He's like, we came over, and I'm like, I don't want to leave yet. So we just bought a house. Mm-hmm. And I go, oh, did you buy it like on the golf course, on the beach? He's like, yeah. He goes, it's actually really cool. It comes with a little bit of the ocean. So yeah,
a little bit of the ocean.
I own some of the water. So I can kind of do that. He goes, yeah, it's a good way to spend the next few months. I mean, we'll see. I may go, hang out in Palm Springs after that. And he was very casual about it.
Yeah.
And I was with another person as we were having this conversation. He leaves, and the other person's like, what an asshole. And it's like, doesn't he realize how arrogant and douchey he sounds?
Yeah.
I go, no, he doesn't at all. And he would be shocked if you even suggested that he sounds that way.
Yeah.
His life is just radical. And that's Kathleen Kennedy. It's a lot of, unfortunately, for better or worse, it's a lot of people in comics. They're making their comics. They're getting checks. They're getting contracts from Marvel and DC.
Right.
No, they actually don't think terribly about what people like me. I'm not even talking about the other YouTubers. Forget the others. People like me are saying, why should they give a shit?
Well, the Kathleen Kennedy doesn't need to give a shit because she's so rich.
Right.
People in comics who are doing well, oftentimes are not that rich.
You're right.
The reason that they don't look into this is because they don't care. They don't know where to look. They don't have time. They're not interested, right?
Well,
it's not that they're too busy making billions of dollars. It's just that it's not on their radar. Like, why isn't all the hatred on their radar, Perch?
Yeah, no. Well, I'll put it this way. What would be the response? I mean, if I'm one of these creators, I'm looking at this, I'm like, I can spend my time being like Kathleen Kennedy and getting that money, or I could pay attention to YouTube. What are you going to do?
Right.
I mean, and by the way, the correct answer absolutely is you're building your career at this current state. Should be paying attention and understanding why people are upset and trying to figure out what you can improve in yourself. But self-reflection is not exactly everybody's strong suit.
So why isn't Kathleen Kennedy self-reflecting on how she destroyed Star Wars?
Because she has reached the multi-billion-dollar. She's reached the $1 million club.
Okay.
I mean that that's the extreme, of course.
Now, is Zaslav of that same caliber?
Yeah, I think Zaslav, as far as I understand, has as much or more net worth than she does. But
so James Gunn taking over. And by the way, I'm looking forward to your James Gunn video. What does it mean?
Oh,
it's been like a month since that was announced, and you're not on the ball. And I really want to know what you think about that.
Absolutely.
But James Gunn seems to be approachable on social media and still post like a normie in a lot of ways.
He does, yeah. That's his brand. It's what he's established. We'll see where that's at. And I mean, if he can turn the DCU around and start, if he could be the Kevin Feige of DC and actually make it work,
right?
I will make you a bet that in 5 years, a lot of that approachability will be gone.
Oh, his approachability online. So if he's good at this job, he should probably be off Twitter.
Yeah,
hopefully, because he's making too much money, like Kathleen Kennedy. All right, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because a lot of the people complaining about the, why don't they understand your bad? They miss the core point, which is not that your anger is wrong. Your anger is probably very right. You know, that you paid into these characters for 40 years. They're radically changing them. They're not achieving an audience. They're seemingly obsessed with, Elon Musk or Twitter or whatever the fuck it is.
Right.
All that's true. Your anger is totally true. They're not paying attention. That's just,
Yeah. It's hard to pay attention to negativity.
Yeah.
It's easy to go into your tunnel vision and high five your friends and try to dunk on the chuds or whatever they think they're doing.
It's your mind's not wired that way. I mean, and that's a good thing. Your brain tries to steer you away from things that are harmful to yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, in some of these cases, it doesn't do a good enough job.
It's hard. I mean, all right, I'm going to toot my own horn for a second here.
Yeah.
Batman is the top of the mountain. There's basically Batman and X-Men. I've done way better in this industry than I ever thought I would. I'm making way more money. I'm making it's just insane right now. Outside of what Image guys were making in the 90s, I seem to be making similar to that, just in original art sales. Never thought I'd get this far. I'm appreciative as fuck. I'm a New England guy. The culture of New England is you don't have an ego. You're very humble, hard worker. That's just what New England people do. It's not in our nature in New England to bask in fame. Like fame is just a weird word that would not fly in Boston or New Hampshire or Maine. Like that's just not wired that way.
I'm going to just be honest with you. That's not my impression of Boston, but okay. Let's
all right.
It's the craziest thing I've heard you say all day.
in the real Boston, Southie, not in TV Boston, whatever the hell. Not in Tom Bradyville.
Yeah.
Fuck! I just prepped all that and I forgot what I was gonna fucking say.
you're making a stand for the humility of
right.
Boston.
I know, but I still, even having done what I've done, I still want to know why a reader is unhappy with Batman Beyond. I still want to know where I'm missing it. I still want to hear the negative comment, like within reason. Like I don't want to hear negativity all day, but I'd like a once over of like, oh yeah, where might I have my nose open? And I don't know why people don't do that. I feel like doing that is due diligence to protect your status. If you're ignoring what people are saying, then you might be missing something. And I know it's hard to hear criticism. And usually when I get negativity, I'll say, oh, thank you for your input, blah, blah, blah. But, I go to my bartender and I'm like, fuck this person, fuck this, fuck that. Like, I'm not above it. I just don't let it show.
Right. And maybe that's it's a good cap actually to this video and the being rich, being successful. One of the most common things rich, successful people will tell you is that you do have to have some self-awareness.
Yeah.
Whether it's how you're coming off when you're giving a speech, if you're genuine when you're talking to another employee or whatever it happens. There's a lot of little steps there.
Right.
And yes, absolutely a critical thing in comics is don't lean away from people who hate you. Understand why. Right. And if the hatred is irrational, I gave this quote in the video. If somebody hates you for no reason, you give that motherfucker a reason. But otherwise, learn from it.
Yeah. Hey, before we sign off, I have one question about you recently posted that a woman you worked with would negotiate in a board meeting and grab a guy's balls and say, I'm getting what I want, or whatever that you said.
Yeah.
How
Not
is
in
that
the boardroom,
possible?
to be fair, at dinner, but go on. Yeah.
All right. Why don't you quickly go over that story real fast?
No, I mean, there was some comment. It was just the purpose of it was that one thing that I think would benefit comics is to get people who are not lifelong comic fans in some of these roles and instead go get some sharks, whether they're financial people, whether, whatever. There's an HR trick a lot of companies are doing right now where they tell all the employees, there's unlimited vacation. We're not going to count vacation anymore. You could be off as much as you want. Everybody thought those people were crazy. But what it did was it effectively took all the vacation time off the books. So you had to, as a company, you had to accrue vacation time. So immediately the companies that did this saved themselves $200 to $300 million if they were big companies in money they had to write off every year as employee. Plus, it meant that when the employees get fired or leave, they don't have to pay it out legally now because there is no vacation time. It's just unlimited. They also knew that most employees would psychologically be scared of taking unlimited vacation time, so they just wouldn't.
Right.
And so, but that's a cold, cutthroat kind of way to do it.
Yeah.
So I was describing this woman, and that was a real story, and everybody kind of went off on her being a rapist and everything else. That was wrong, but basically, she was a salesperson. She was a shark, and I remember she's telling this story. The piece of context I guess I didn't give that video was that it was a tough negotiation. The person was being a dick, and she said, and I know enough that it's a true story.
Yeah,
she reached under the table and she grabbed the guy by the balls and just said, do you want me to kind of just leave my hand here, or do you want me to squeeze? And this was a real thing, but the metaphor there was, if you're a company, hire some sharks who are actually going to go and fucking burn the world down to get what you want. That's what corporations should try and strive to.
I get your point, man. But I'm going to the ball story specifically, though. Like, do you think Kathleen Kennedy has been in a meeting where she's had to literally grab balls? Or if you flip this, if I'm trying to sell some girl on my publishing company and I'm not going to let go of her tits until she submits, I mean, we're in the world of Me Too for men as well.
That's a different take. Yeah, no, I mean, please don't go into the. I mean, don't go into the. Is this gender fair? Of course not. Of course, none of this is fair. None of it. Yeah. The power move was that she was a relatively small woman who,
Is she attractive?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know what? That helps, honestly. Yeah. If I'm getting my balls grabbed and I don't like it, if she's not disgusting, I'll listen a little bit more.
You're taking all the wrong direction. No, but it was, look, it would, and the other part that I think a lot of the viewers probably don't get in that, it's hard to understand this, but the world of sales is different. It is a different world. Is it fair? No. If a guy did the same thing, would he get fired? Absolutely. Is that fair? Absolutely not.
Right.
But it does go on. I'm not saying if this stuff is right or wrong. I'm saying it's reality of what happens. Right. So Kathleen Kennedy, has she grabbed some balls? I'm sure she probably has. Both because she had to and because she had to. Kind of both sides of that.
Proverbially or literally?
No, I don't. I mean, how do I get to guessing whose balls? I would. So
See, this is the kind of stuff that no one else will bring up with you. This is why you have me as a guest.
No, I love it. I would be willing to bet that on her way up, she had to grab some balls, and I'm betting that when she got on the top to keep her power, she had to bring some balls in line.
All right.
If that makes any sense. But I mean, you're wrong. Maybe she just did this all through, apple pie and smiles and sunshine and flowers. Maybe so. Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, man. I love this story. I like a good boardroom story where you slap it down like that, so to speak. Yeah. My father was a headhunter in the 80s, so it's in my blood. I get it. But in the world of Me Too, I was like, how is that still happening? If that happened in the 80s, 90s. Sure, fine. But these days, Jesus, talk about an HR problem waiting to happen.
I think for better or worse, the rules are a little different.
That's fair.
They shouldn't be, but they are.
Well, you're at a height of money and success that is out of my realm. So there's things going on in these evil board meetings where people start, sectioning off the planet to different evil resources. I have no idea what those look like.
What's funny is I think for all the time that's gone by and all the Me Too era and all the stuff we hear about on the news, a lot of traditional businesses work the exact same way they did 40 years ago.
Yeah. That's one prediction for 2023. I think that the woke stuff is just going to keep losing ground. I think companies are waking up to the fact that Twitter outrage is not customer outrage. No. I think something similar is happening in movies with Top Gun being such a hit and being void of politics, and with people sort of being tired of the bullshit Trump and people wanting to just get back to getting things done. It's less about sensational outrage. It's more about results. I feel like the pendulum is starting to swing away from that. And I think the people in comics who are really invested in personal grievances and social and SJW stuff or whatever, even people on the other side or comic skaters or whatever, I feel like they're going to become less important next year.
All the money's dropping on both sides, but the crowdfunded stuff's making less. It is, you can point to a couple big ones. I'm sure some people point to the Eric July thing. Obviously he made a lot of money, but you look at the mean of the lesser known creators, they're making less.
Right.
On the other hand, you look at some of the, the Marvel Voices books have consistently made less and less and less.
Right.
A lot of that stuff is dragging. Strange World bombed horribly.
Right. Is it true that some of the CG people are seeing like a plateau in subscribers? Like they're even starting to lose subscribers? Like they.
I mean, I don't know what people are seeing and tracking, but I mean, I know a couple of us are looking at the different, campaigns that are run. I know a lot of people say, hey, I'd love to do a sales analysis. That'd be a tough, I mean, that'll be a funny one to do, because I do have some various campaigns and I tracked them over time. The numbers are all looking kind of shitty. I mean, they're buoyed by a couple big hits, but it's not going in the right direction. But I wish it was, but it's not.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, we'll save that for another video next time. All right. Well, Sean, hey, thank you. Yeah, this is a good, crazy conversation. Good, man. 2 hours. Wow. Are we going to break that up, or are you going to put it all in one video?
Fuck it. I'll just put. I don't know. I'll do some fancy editing. Why not?
Sure.
We'll do that.
Take out the part where I stopped and took a leak, would you?
Absolutely. Yeah. All right.
All right,
Thank you very much, Sean. We'll talk to you soon.
You too, brother. Take care.